The jungle of VO3 had always been alive, but tonight it seemed to breathe with malevolent purpose. Bioluminescent moss pulsed along ancient stone walls, casting eerie blue-green light across the sacred grove temple complex. The air hung thick with moisture and the heady scent of night-blooming flowers that only opened during celestial alignments. Princess Nayara felt the rough fibers of the ceremonial ropes digging into her wrists as she was led through the temple entrance. Her captors moved with practiced precision. Their elongated heads bowed in reverence to rituals older than their recorded history. The princess's pale blue skin, usually radiant in the light of VO3's 3 moons, now appeared ashen with fear. "You dishonor yourself and our ancestors with this treachery," Nayara said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The large, expressive green eyes that marked her royal bloodline narrowed as she addressed the tall figure leading the procession. High Priestess Kaltor turned slowly, her amber eyes gleaming in the darkness. The ritual scarification patterns across her darker blue skin seemed to shift in the flickering torchlight. "Niece," she said, the word dripping with false affection, "it is you who dishonors our ways. Your progressive ideas threaten the very fabric of our society." She raised her twisted jungle wood staff. "Tonight, you serve a higher purpose." From her hidden observation post nestled in the dense foliage surrounding the temple, Dr. Alara Voss adjusted her recording equipment with trembling hands. The human anthropologist had spent 3 years studying the VO3 culture. But nothing in her research had prepared her for this. What she was witnessing went beyond academic interest. This was a kidnapping, possibly an assassination. "The royal delegation reported her missing 6 hours ago," she whispered into her recorder. "This appears to be the work of the Forgotten One's cult. I should alert authorities, but—" She hesitated, torn between her academic oath of non-interference and basic moral obligation. "If I interfere, I could destroy years of building trust. If I don't, I'm complicit in whatever happens to her." Meanwhile, in the capital city, Zevran paced the royal palace's communications center, his tall, muscular frame tense with worry. The warrior's ritual tattoos seemed to darken with his mood as he received the latest report. "Nothing from the diplomatic transport," said the communications officer. "Last signal placed them near the Sacred Grove region." Zevran's fist slammed against the wall. She warned the council about traveling so close to the old temples, especially during the alignment. His childhood friendship with Nayara had evolved into something more complex over the years. A combination of duty, deep affection, and unspoken longing that made her disappearance unbearable. "Prepare my shuttle," he ordered, "and send word to our contacts in the border villages. The princess must be found before moonrise." Back at the temple, Nayara was being prepared for the ritual. Attendants removed her diplomatic attire, replacing it with ceremonial wraps of gold thread and crimson silk. Her long black hair was adorned with sacred oils that glistened in the torchlight. Despite her predicament, she maintained the regal bearing instilled in her since birth. "The royal blood runs strong in you," Kaltor observed, circling her niece like a predator. "A pity you've denied your heritage, denied the gifts that come with it." "I deny superstition, not heritage," Nayara replied. "Our people can honor tradition without being enslaved by it." Kaltor laughed, a sound like stone grinding against stone. "Such arrogance. You speak of things you don't understand." She leaned closer, her breath hot against Nayara's ear. "But you will. Before tonight ends, you will understand everything." As the 3 moons of VO3 aligned in the night sky, the drumming began. Hollow tree trunks covered with stretched animal hides produced deep, resonant sounds that seemed to vibrate through the stone floor. Cultists in flowing robes of deep purple and black swayed in rhythm, their chanting growing louder with each passing moment. Dr. Voss had made her decision. She activated her emergency beacon, sending coordinates to both the VO3 authorities and her research vessel in orbit. Then, keeping to the shadows, she moved closer to the temple entrance. Her gray-streaked hair was tucked beneath a hood as she blended with the gathering crowd of cult followers. "The alignment reaches its apex in 20 minutes, she noted quietly into her wrist recorder. "Based on similar ceremonies I've documented, this appears to be a summoning ritual, but the presence of royal blood suggests something far more significant." Inside the temple's central chamber, preparations reached their final stage. A massive cauldron bubbled at the center, filled with a luminous blue liquid that shifted and churned of its own accord. Vapors rose from its surface, changing color with the intensity of the drumming, from pale lavender to deep indigo. Nayara was led to an elaborate apparatus of pulleys and ornate metal ropes. The ceremonial bindings around her wrists were replaced with intricate restraints woven with precious metals that both bound and adorned her. As she was lifted from the ground, suspended above the cauldron, the princess finally felt the first tremor of genuine fear. "What deity do you imagine this will summon, Aunt?" she called down, trying to maintain her composure. Kaltor's smile was terrible to behold. "No deity, child. This ritual predates our gods. What comes through will be something far older, and it will recognize me as its vessel, not you." Zevran's shuttle cut through the night sky at dangerous speed. The warrior had assembled a small rescue team, loyal guards who would die for their princess without question. As they approached the sacred grove, the atmospheric disturbance caused by the ritual was visible even from the air. A swirling column of energy rising from the temple into the aligned moons. "We're too late to prevent the ceremony," he told his team, "but not too late to save her. Remember your training against cult fanatics. They believe they're immortal. Prove them wrong." The shuttle landed in a clearing half a kilometer from the temple. As the team disembarked, Zevran felt a strange pressure in his mind, like someone trying to communicate. He dismissed it as anxiety and led his warriors into the jungle. Suspended above the bubbling cauldron, Nayara closed her eyes. The chanting had reached a fever pitch, and the heat from below made it difficult to breathe. She had always rejected the mystical aspects of her culture, focusing instead on diplomatic relations with other worlds and modernizing VO3 society. Now, facing death, she found herself instinctively reaching for the meditative practices her grandmother had taught her as a child. As her breathing steadied, something unexpected happened. The world around her seemed to slow, and a warmth spread from her chest outward. Behind her closed eyelids, patterns of light danced and shifted. When she opened her eyes, the temple looked different. Energy patterns were visible around every living thing, connecting them in a complex web. "There," Kaltor announced, raising her staff. "The alignment is complete. Lower the sacrifice." The mechanism creaked as Nayara began her descent toward the cauldron. The blue liquid bubbled more violently, sending bursts of steam upward that stopped just inches from her bare feet. Her black-painted toenails reflected the eerie light as she desperately concentrated on the strange new awareness growing within her. In the crowd, Dr. Voss watched in horror. The anthropologist had witnessed many ceremonies across a dozen worlds, but never one where a sentient being was to be sacrificed. Her hand moved toward the stunner concealed in her robes, a violation of research protocols. But she could no longer stand by. Before she could act, a commotion erupted at the temple entrance. Zevran and his warriors had arrived, fighting their way through the outer ring of cultists. But they were outnumbered, and the inner chamber was still far from their reach. Nayara felt the heat intensifying as she was lowered closer to the cauldron. In desperation, she reached out with her mind, trying to connect with anyone who might help. To her shock, she felt minds responding. First, Dr. Voss, whose presence she had somehow sensed in the crowd, then Zevran, fighting at the temple perimeter. "Help me," she projected, the psychic ability awakening fully under the extreme stress. "I'm in the central chamber. There's a cauldron." Kaltor's eyes widened as she noticed the change in her niece. The princess's green eyes had begun to glow with an inner light, and the ceremonial wraps around her body rippled as if in a breeze, though the air was still. "No," the high priestess hissed. "It's not possible. You rejected the old ways." "I rejected your interpretation of them," Nayara replied, her voice somehow carrying over the drums and chanting. "But the power is in our blood, not your rituals." With a cry of rage, Kaltor signaled for the attendants to accelerate the lowering. Nayara's feet were now mere inches from the bubbling surface. In that moment of ultimate peril, the princess surrendered fully to the abilities she had denied for so long. Energy surged through her body, crackling along the metal in her restraints. The ropes began to glow, first red, then white-hot. With a tremendous effort of will, Nayara reversed the flow of power from the ritual, drawing it into herself instead of into the cauldron. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the cult. The cauldron's contents changed from blue to a brilliant gold, then shot upward in a column of light that engulfed Nayara without burning her. Cultists screamed as the energy they had been channeling rebounded, sending many collapsing to the ground. Kaltor alone remained standing, her staff raised in defiance. "You don't understand what you're doing. The entity must come through. It promised me power." "The only power here is what we create ourselves," Nayara said, her restraints dissolving as she remained suspended in the air by her own newly awakened abilities. "Our ancestors knew this. They didn't worship these energies. They learned to work with them." As she spoke, Zevran and his warriors finally broke through to the inner chamber, followed closely by Dr. Voss. They stopped in awe at the sight before them, their princess hovering above the cauldron, wreathed in golden light, facing down the high priestess. With a howl of frustration, Kaltor lunged forward, thrusting her staff toward the cauldron. "If I cannot have the power, no one will." The staff's tip touched the liquid, causing an immediate reaction. The cauldron began to crack, deadly energy leaking from the fissures. "Everyone out!" Nayara commanded, her voice carrying with psychic force. As the temple began to shake, she focused her newfound abilities on containing the cauldron's volatile contents. Zevran rushed forward. "Nayara, we must go." "Not yet," she replied, straining with effort. "Help the others. I'll follow." Reluctantly, he organized the evacuation, even ensuring that the surviving cultists made it to safety. Dr. Voss lingered at the entrance, her recorder capturing the extraordinary scene. The princess suspended in air, channeling ancient energies to prevent a catastrophe. Inside, Nayara and Kaltor remained locked in their standoff. The high priestess had fallen to her knees, still clutching her staff as the temple crumbled around them. "You've destroyed everything," Kaltor accused. "No," Nayara replied, slowly descending until her feet touched the ground. "I've only begun to understand it. Our traditions contain truths, Aunt. Dangerous ones that need to be approached with wisdom, not blind devotion." With a final surge of effort, Nayara contained the cauldron's energy and directed it upward, through the temple roof, where it dissipated harmlessly into the night sky. As the immediate danger passed, exhaustion overtook her. She stumbled toward the exit, pausing only to offer her hand to Kaltor. The High Priestess looked at the outstretched hand, then up at her niece's face. After a moment's hesitation, she accepted the help, rising unsteadily to her feet. "The old ways are dying," Kaltor said bitterly as they made their way out of the crumbling temple. "They're not dying," Nayara corrected her. "They're evolving, as they always have." Outside in the jungle clearing, Zevran rushed forward to support Nayara as she emerged from the temple. Behind them, the ancient structure finally collapsed in on itself, burying the cauldron and its secrets beneath tons of stone. Dr. Voss approached cautiously, her academic reserve at war with her relief at seeing the princess alive. "Your Highness, I should have intervened sooner." Nayara smiled tiredly. "You did what you could, Doctor, and your observations may prove valuable as we try to understand what happened here tonight." As royal shuttles appeared in the sky above, responding to Zevran's alert, Nayara looked back at the ruined temple. The jungle was already beginning to reclaim it, vines and roots pulling at the fallen stones. "What will you do now?" Zevran asked quietly, still supporting her weight. Nayara watched as Kaltor was taken into custody, the High Priestess's face a mask of defeated pride. "First, I will heal. Then," she looked up at the three moons, still aligned in perfect harmony. "Then I will learn. Our people stand at a crossroads between ancient wisdom and future potential. We need both to survive." As dawn broke over the jungle of VO3, Princess Nayara boarded the royal shuttle, her ceremonial wraps replaced with a simple robe. The events at the sacred grove would change her forever, and through her, perhaps her entire civilization. The path ahead would not be easy, balancing tradition with progress, power with responsibility. But for the first time in her life, she felt truly connected to her heritage, not as a burden of tradition to be maintained, but as a living legacy to be understood. The ancient and the modern, woven together like the golden threads in her ceremonial bindings, both restraint and adornment, limitation and strength. The shuttle rose above the jungle canopy, leaving behind the ruins of one chapter and carrying its survivors toward the uncertain beginning of another.